What's up, y'all, and welcome back to another video, specifically to a from scratch pantry restock. I made one of these before. It was just so fun to film and you guys really seemed to enjoy it, so I thought, hey, I'll make another one. I'll keep doing them so long as y'all enjoy them. But these are just some things that I like to keep in my pantry, in my fridge, that I make from scratch that I'd say a lot of people would probably buy from the store, but are honestly so simple to make yourself. They'll save you a lot of money, and usually they're gonna have much better ingredients or be more effective overall. So the first thing I'm making is some bone broth. This is something that I make quite frequently. I don't make it every single week. It depends largely on if I have enough in my stock bag, we'll say, in the freezer. But whenever I do have bones on hand in particular, I like to make it. This week, I am using a frozen chicken carcass that I have, along with another chicken that is not yet frozen. It has some meat still on the bones. That'll give it some extra good flavor. We had smoked these, one of them earlier in the week and one a couple weeks ago. And when it comes to making bone broth, on a weekly basis, what I do is just use the scraps that I have collected over the week, over the last few weeks. And this is what makes it so much more affordable, saves so much money, and you're still getting a nice gelatin-rich broth, which is really supportive for your gut. I want to add a little caveat here though. So bone broth is pretty high histamine due to the long cook time, due to the fact that the meat itself is already cooked before you are turning it into broth. And so if you're someone who deals with histamine intolerance, then meat stock is probably going to be a better bet for you. This is made with meats that have not yet been cooked, and it is not cooked for nearly as long. But if you want a full process on bone broth, go ahead and check out Basics, my pro-metabolic starter guide. I'm going to link that in the description box below with a little 10% off code for you that you can take advantage of. But bottom line, I guess, is I throw what I have in the crock pot. I put some filtered water over it. I add pepper, I add garlic, I already said water, some apple cider vinegar, salt. I cook it for like 24 to 48 hours, and then I strain it and I put it in jars. I went ahead and put some this week straight in a mug to enjoy. When I have this on hand, I like to have it usually in the mornings, or if not in the mornings, for a little afternoon snack. Again, it's high in certain amino acids that you're not going to get through muscle meats, and it also is just high in protein, given that amino acids are what make up protein. That makes sense. I enjoy it with a little bit of seaweed as kind of a thyroid support. So that'll stay in my fridge. If I make a bunch, I'll put it in my freezer and just pull it out as I need it. You can also, of course, use it for soups. Next up, we're going to make some sauerkraut. Sauerkraut is a great way, I would argue, maybe the best way even, to get your probiotics in. 1 spoonful of sauerkraut, I don't remember the exact number, but it has a vast array of different strains of the bacteria that you want in your gut. And when it comes to probiotics or probiotic foods, you don't just want a lot of bacteria, you want a lot of different kinds of bacteria. And sauerkraut is so much more powerful in this regard than any sort of pill probiotic you could get. So what you do is you shred up or chop up really finely some cabbage. You can use yellow cabbage or purple cabbage, and then you simply add salt to it and you squish all of the juice, as much of the juice as you can out of the cabbage. In terms of the ratio of cabbage to salt, you want about 2% salt by weight. So that is 20 grams of salt per kilogram of cabbage, or about 1 tablespoon of salt per pound of cabbage. You can read all about the science of sauerkraut. Definitely stick to these ratios and learn more about it if you want to, but the ratio of salt to cabbage is important when it comes to making sure that it is safe to eat based on my understanding. But I squish out all of the juice, trying to make a nice hefty brine, we'll say, and then I put my cabbage into a jar. This was a small batch. I just used a partial head of cabbage that I had left over, and I pour the juice on top. You're gonna see me compact it down here with my fist. So I guess you kind of have to have small hands to do this, or you can use a tool of some kind, or I guess get a kid involved to help push the sauerkraut down to the bottom of the jar. You really want it as compacted as possible, and you want that brine to come up over top. I now have a couple cabbage leaves that I reserved from the beginning of the process from the outside that I'm going to put over to kind of form a protective seal over the shredded kraut that's down at the bottom. And again, you want that liquid to come up over the cabbage. You can add in some extra brine. I don't have the ratios for that, but you can add in some extra brine if you need to. But generally, if you take your time squishing the cabbage, you will get enough liquid out. So set that on the counter, and it usually takes, well, actually, it really varies how long it can take. I would say probably at least a week. Most places, if you're somewhere tropical and super warm, it may take a little bit less time. I've been places where it's cold and a little bit dry, and it has taken closer to a month. So just check it periodically and make sure to release excess gas. Okay, we're on to the beef jerky. I know we've been here for a second, but yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm making homemade beef jerky. This is a grass-fed eye of round that I picked up from the local co-op, and I sliced it into thin strips. It does work best if you go against the grain, which I didn't do, but you're going to get much more tender beef jerky if you go against the grain, so bear that in mind. Now I'm making the marinade. It is, I believe it's a half cup of soy sauce. I can put the marinade I used down below. It was just from the recipe book that came with my dehydrator, but a half cup of soy sauce. You could use coconut aminos or tamari if you would prefer. I'm not afraid of a little bit of soy. Goodness, I can make a whole video on that, but I will use some soy sauce occasionally. And then it's about a quarter cup of pineapple juice, a quarter cup of brown sugar, some ginger, some garlic, and it's a nice little teriyaki marinade. So you'll see here in a second that I am going to put all of my beef into a plastic bag. This is one of the few instances where I do like to use plastic bags because it's not going to be exposed to heat, and it just really makes getting the marinade all over the beef really convenient. But I'm going to put my beef in a plastic bag and then pour the marinade on top, trying to get as much air out of the bag as possible. I will seal it up, and then you're just going to really, really thoroughly coat the beef. You want to make sure when you're pouring it into the bag that you get all of the bits of sugar out of the bottom. Of course, you could also use honey. You could use coconut sugar. There are lots of different variations on this. I found with teriyaki, if that's what you're going for, the pineapple juice is so important, so don't leave that out. And I've seen that actually in a lot of different beef jerky flavors because the enzymes in it work as a tenderizer. So this was in the fridge overnight. I would leave it in the fridge for at least 8 hours so the meat can soak up lots of flavor. And then I am just putting it on the trays of my dehydrator. Yes, I did drip the juice all over the floor, and then I just mopped it up. But this is what I found to be the best way to do this, or the easiest way to do this, at least when I'm trying to film at the same time. But I just made sure it was laid pretty flat. And I will say, at least with my dehydrator, this is the Consori. I'm not certain what model it is, but I'll try to find it and link it below. You can cut it a little thicker than you think you would need to, so to say, because oftentimes I'll do it a little bit too thin, and then it gets like a little harder than maybe would be ideal. But if you're doing it in your oven, for instance, you probably want to cut it really nice and thin. Okay, anyways, I dehydrated it for 6 hours at 165 degrees, and then I'm just pulling it out and popping it into this storage jar. I love having this homemade beef jerky on hand because it is just so much cheaper than anything store-bought. The ingredients are a lot better than a lot of store-bought beef jerkies. I would actually argue, so you can get grass-fed beef, make grass-fed beef jerky, and that's going to be cheaper, generally speaking, than non-grass-fed beef jerky with crappy ingredients from the grocery store. So definitely worth trying. It works pretty well in your oven. You can also do it in your smoker. I haven't made that, but my husband did growing up, and he said it was so delicious, and I want to try that at some point. Okay, last thing we're going to make is some pickled onions. This could not be simpler, and this is something it's been a long time since I've made. I forgot how delicious these are, and especially because we eat a lot of beef and potatoes, beef and rice, just ground beef kind of constituting the base of many of our meals throughout the week. Pickled onions are such a delicious way to kind of spice up a beef bowl or whatever type of bowl you are making. Any meal, I think, can generally benefit from some pickled onions. So take your red onion, cut off the ends, peel off the skin, then cut it in half and cut it into really thin strips, little rainbow shape strips. I imagine you know how to cut an onion. Then you're going to pack those as tightly as you can so that they all fit into a jar. Set that to the side and you're going to make your brine. So here I am putting in 1 cup of white vinegar. I'm also going to put in a cup of water. And then it's just a 1/4 cup of sugar, and it is a tablespoon of salt. Just use kosher salt. You can use mineral salt. That's a great way to get some extra electrolytes in. You're gonna put this on the stove and just heat it until everything is combined. There are no solids left, stirring it occasionally. And then you are going to pour it over your onions. You might do like I did and literally spill half of it over the counter. You could save your extra brine if you didn't spill it and did have extra, but clean up any drips. You're gonna seal this up, pop it in the fridge overnight, and those suckers will be ready the next day. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, bye y'all.